On November 9, a riot broke out inside a prison in Ecuador. It was early in the morning. Gunfire and explosions echoed through the air. When security forces finally regained control, they discovered a horrifying sight. At least 31 inmates were dead. According to Ecuador's prison authority, 27 of them died from asphyxiation by suspension. In other words, they had been hanged. 4 others died earlier in the morning during the riot.
How are there weapons inside? When you bring in objects, they check everything, even a water container. So everyone is asking how there are weapons, how they kill each other inside.
But why did the riot begin? It started when rival gang groups inside the prison clashed. Ecuador's prison agency, known by its initials SNAI, says the violence was triggered by a planned transfer of certain inmates to a newly built maximum security prison. First, a violent outbreak left dozens injured and 4 people dead. Hours later, guards discovered 27 inmates hanged on the 3rd floor of the building, likely reprisals carried out inside the facility. This is not an isolated incident. The same prison, located in the city of Machala, saw another deadly episode just recently.
Deme otro cartucho. Ahí.
Ya estaban disparando, ya.
Ya, de seguridad al frente. ¡Ey! Dele, yo. Ya está limpio, vamos. Que siga avanzando. Está peleado, Cambio la seguridad. Tranquilo.
In September, a riot there left 14 people dead and 14 wounded.
El que está ahí.
And only days later, a prison in the northern city of Esmeraldas reported 17 more deaths. The fact that inmates could hang one another, and that too in large numbers, shows how much power they hold inside the system. And that power comes from one thing: the role of gangs. In Ecuador, prisons have become hubs of gang control. These gangs don't just fight each other inside. They are sophisticated criminal organizations with international links. Two of Ecuador's most notorious groups, Los Choneros and Los Lobos, have even been designated foreign terrorist organizations by the US Department of State.
We gave a severe blow to the Lobos structure when we seized their assets and companies. We did the same thing with the Choneros. We attacked them and caused them damage of more than 20 or 30 million dollars.
These are not small street gangs. They traffic cocaine, controlling its flow from Colombia and Peru through Ecuador's Pacific ports to the United States and Europe. They fight for territory. Like the coastal zones, drug routes, ports, and even prisons themselves. Inside prisons, they recruit new members and coordinate violence. Gang leaders might be locked up, yet they continue to run operations from behind bars. They extort businesses and civilians, carry out kidnappings for ransom, and impose protection payments. They also infiltrate the state by weakening police, courts, and prisons through bribery and corruption. Inside places like the Machala prison, gang affiliates aren't just inmates, they are power brokers. The mass hangings likely show how one faction decided to eliminate its rivals.
Removing high-level members would not necessarily translate into relief, but rather into a growing fragmentation of these groups, and therefore a growing fight between a growing number of armed groups.
So how did Ecuador, once considered relatively safe, turn into Latin America's most dangerous country? There are several reasons. First, geography. Ecuador sits right between the world's top cocaine producers. Colombia and Peru has major export ports on the Pacific coast. That makes it a perfect transit hub for drug cartels. Then, there is the economy. Ecuador uses the US dollar, which makes it an attractive place for money laundering by international cartels. Next, the violence. Over the past few years, gangs have begun using terror tactics like beheadings, car bombs, and public assassinations of politicians. This has pushed the country's murder rate to record highs. In Machala, the transfer of inmates to a new high-security prison was meant to reduce gang power. Reports say over 300 high-risk inmates were moved to the newly built Encuentro prison in Santa Elena province, part of President Daniel Noboa's plan to take back control. But ironically, the very announcement of that transfer triggered the violence. Once the inmates learned of the reorganization, tensions exploded. Hundreds of inmates have been killed in Ecuador's prisons over the past few years. And this latest incident shows just how vulnerable the system still is. It shows when organized crime takes root inside prisons, the danger does not stay behind bars. It spreads into the streets, into communities, into daily life. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you next week with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munmun Bhattacharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.